I say to people that you've made every other decision for your pet. You decide what they eat, when they go to the bathroom, who they play with. But in most of these pets, they are dying. And it's just how long it is going to take for them to die. Your dog that you lost would never want you to be sad. They would never say, I need you to grieve just a little bit longer to really show your love for me. I really believe that you have the power and they trust us to make the best decision.
So what advice do you have for families that are in that hospice transition? Welcome to the Digital Legacy Podcast, where we talk about death and dying in the digital age. If you ever asked, how do I protect myself and those I love if something unexpected happened to me? You're in the right place. I'm your host, Nikki Weiss, and together we'll explore how to protect yourself in a world where both your physical and digital legacy leave a lasting impact. And welcome back to another episode of the Digital Legacy Podcast, where we talk about death and dying in the digital age. Now, I have invited Dr. Faith Banks, who is a hospice pet vet and a little outside of the norm, maybe. But for me, I have 4 dogs currently, and dogs have been very much part of my life. And when I think about end-of-life planning, not just for myself, but for my pets, I feel like this is also a very important topic. So Faith, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
I have been following you on TikTok. You are an influencer out there. I don't know how many other vet hospice professionals there are, but can you share more about your experience and what got you into this space?
Sure. So I live in Toronto in Canada, and I graduated from vet school in 1996. I spent about 16 years in regular practice at a downtown clinic. And as my own Bernese Mountain Dog was aging, I became more interested in how best to care for her. Geriatrics, pain management, end of life care was really not something that we learned about at school back then, but it was very much something that was sort of important to me in understanding how to care for her. And so I sort of, dove in and learned as much as I could, and then came across an article about animal hospice. And it was a term that I had never heard before. And on sort of getting a better understanding, I just thought, I love this idea. I really this is what I want to do. And so I slowly shifted away from the practice that I was working at and started up my own service in Toronto. And I focused on helping people care for their elderly pets at home and, understanding the changes that they were going through, how best they could help their pets. And then, if or when the time came that euthanasia was chosen, I would go back to their home and provide that service in the comfort and privacy of their home. So I started my service in 2012. It was just me. We're a team of about 10 veterinarians at this time, and big support staff to make sure all the pieces are moving as they should in helping the families that we help in and around Toronto.
And I just want to take note that when we talk about euthanasia, some people might not be familiar with that term. So if you can break it down.
Sure.
In layman's would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. So euthanasia really in Greek terminology means good death. And so that is what we aim to provide, which is a good death. And so in many of these pets, there's so many reasons that euthanasia may be chosen, but in most of these pets, they are dying. And it's just how long it is going to take for them to die and the pain that is associated, not with the actual death process per se, but the illness that they have beforehand, if we're not able to manage that in a proper way. And so families are choosing to say goodbye and provide this good death experience for their pets and for their families at home. And so we do that for dogs and cats and small, we call them pocket pets. It's mostly bunnies. My service doesn't do exotics, but the majority are dogs and cats that we're helping.
And we're talking about hospice. I just did an episode with a hospice nurse and even just educating people on human hospice. And now we're crossing over into bringing hospice into our pets' lives.
Mm-hmm.
It is about quality of life. And it's also a choice and a decision, right? So how many veterinarians are trained to have these hospice conversations with their clients?
Oh boy. Well, most of them are not getting it at school. That's for sure. I have been going, this is probably my fifth or sixth, maybe even more than that, year that I've been going to the vet college just outside of Toronto, the Ontario Veterinary College in Guelph. And I speak to the students. I have a 2-hour slot in for the vet students who are in their third year. They graduate after fourth year. I get 2 hours, and I know from speaking to them that is the only sort of full training on euthanasia that they receive. And these vets are graduating, and I know every single one of them is going to need to provide a euthanasia for a pet. And unfortunately, it just hasn't made its way into the curriculum, sadly.
My jaw is still on the floor. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm just mind boggled by that, because I would think that the majority of what they're doing is they're trying to save lives.
Yep.
But at some point they are administering
Correct.
the injection. That's just from an emotional standpoint. As a clinician, I would see that they would need the additional support.
Yeah.
In order, not just the procedure on how to do it, but you've been taking care of a particular animal for its lifetime,
Right.
8-10 years, and now you're actually that veterinarian is actually ending the animal's life.
Yeah, euthanasia. I know some of the vet colleges in the US do have training on euthanasia, but not all of them for sure. And you're right. I mean, this euthanasia experience, obviously, if it affects the family who is losing their beloved pet, for sure. But when you think about the veterinarians and support staff at the clinic that have cared for that pet and developed a relationship with the pet and the owner, and been through so many illness experiences with them, they get very emotionally attached as well. And so when we expect a vet to go into a room, euthanize that pet that they really had a connection with, and then walk out of the room and go into another room 5 minutes later for a new puppy and be all energetic and happy and welcoming, that is a real big roller coaster of emotions. And it's very, very difficult, especially for new vets that don't have these experiences.
I know that wasn't part of our conversation, but you're really bringing out like a wow moment and respect for these clinicians, and also understanding that how hard it is for them to go through this day in, day out, and not have that training. That's I just want to put a pin in that and say, okay, this is hopefully the veterinarian industry can at least take more support on that, because just as humans are living longer, we're also dying longer.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of feeling that right now with our pets. Did you see Kelly Ripa? Do you know what I'm saying? That episode where she just recently lost her beloved dog, of 17
Chewy.
years old, Chewy. And she was just so apologetic, but she lost it on camera.
I know. It was interesting because that actually corresponded just with one of my TikTok videos that I had done. So I started making TikTok videos, as I know you know. I think it was in 2021. A hospice mobile palliative care veterinarian who I went to high school with started doing it, and I really enjoyed her videos. And she convinced me that I should do the same, talking about pets. And so I really enjoy making these videos, and I know that for so many people, they have been very helpful and educational. It's just like this, me sitting at my desk and talking. But that video came out just after, or maybe at the same time, but I hadn't seen it until after. And I talked about an experience that I had where I'd walked into the room of a family that was saying goodbye to their pet. I was at their home, and there were a whole bunch of them lying on the ground, holding the dog's feet and sort of rubbing the feet and talking and smiling. And I walked in and I said, "He doesn't let you do that normally, does he?" And they all started laughing because he was so sedated and relaxed at that point that he allowed them to touch his feet that they never got to experience. And they were looking at them and touching them and smelling them. And like, it was just such a special moment for them getting to do these things that they never got to do before. And so that time where the pet is sedated before they pass is a really special moment. And that's what Kelly was talking about as well, I saw.
I mean, it's an honor. And just as on the human side, people who have the honor to support their loved ones as they are making that transition from life to death, those last breaths, for some people, it is an honorable moment. So, and not everybody feels up to it, right? Because there's a level of trust in the process. And there's also a letting go of control as well. I have to share 2 experiences that I've had. You know, making that decision is so hard. I had 2 dogs. Again, my husband and I have a very long history of having dogs. We used to have a sled dog kennel. We had at one point, we had 16 sled dogs here in Pennsylvania. And then we've done the whole gamut from rescue sled dogs all the way up to AKC show dogs. And so we have a fair sizable property, and I would say we probably have like maybe 23 dogs in our backyard now. Not all of them ours. We've had some friends and neighbors that chose to be able to put their dog back into the earth. And I also want to say that.
Oh, I see. I thought they were living.
Oh, no. Oh, I'm sorry. That in the backyard, meaning like, we have given their final resting place in our backyard, I should say. And my husband talks about how when we make the decision when the dog's life is over, we actually go through a ritual where we will actually dig the hole. And Chuck always says how because digging holes for a grave is even for a dog is it's very physical. But it's also very cathartic, right? To be able to go in and dig that hole and contemplating on the dog's life and what we're doing and how honorable it is to be able to give the dog a final resting place in our home, in our backyard. But it's incredibly challenging to know when and can you give some experiences? Like, how do you advise people on when is the right time to euthanize their dog or pet? Cat, dog, small animal?
So the when is different for everybody. It depends on so many different factors. But if I had to condense it, I think the thing that I find to be really helpful for families is using a quality of life scale. And so when I started my practice, I made a quality of life scale. I looked at the other ones that were available and I sort of took the parts that I liked and I mushed it together. And it was something that we would go to families' homes and we'd spend about 2 hours with a family going through this scale. But when COVID started and we weren't going into people's homes for these consultations, I put it all online onto a document that is really easy and free for anybody to use. And so it allows you to really, take all these factors. We look at 14 different categories and take all these different factors and put a number next to each of them and come up with a number percentage of what that pet's quality of life is. And in that number is your quality of life as the owner too. And, about caregiver burden. And so, that's one of the factors. We look at sleep, we look at pain, we look at anxiety, hygiene or accidents in the house. I mean, there's a whole 14 different things that we assess. And I think that is a really, really helpful tool. It doesn't work for every single pet, depending on what the underlying issue is. But when we're talking about sort of the old, sick pets, it works. And that is a really helpful thing to just get a better understanding of, how they're doing, what it all means.
But I have to also say it goes back to belief and and building out. So part of what we do at Endeavo is we build out a final playbook. We talk a lot about building out that final playbook, and based on your final playbook is going to be based on your belief.
Yep.
Now there were 2 dogs I can think of examples where my husband and I were not on the same page with our beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So I had one dog, Chocolate Lab, rescue. Just we called him the big brown butt sniffer. He was just that big personality dog and had a cancer, and he had his good days and his bad days.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this was before I was remarried, so I actually was able to make this decision on my own, and I made the choice to let him go on a good day. Right. So we said, we took him, he was a good day. We went out, we threw the ball, we made him so tired that by the time we did get to the vet, because we know how bad the bad days were.
Yeah.
He went down peacefully.
Right. Compared
to when Chuck and I married and we had a golden retriever, he and I were not on the same page on when to put the dog down. And I spent the most awful night with Eileen. The labored breathing, I was on the floor with her, just like crying with her, saying, I'm sorry, apologetic, because we had to wait till the next day to make that call. And I think you have some advice that you give to people.
Yeah. I mean, I have said, and this video was probably the most viewed one that I have with almost 2 million views, better a month too early than a day too late. And, maybe you say maybe better a week too early, a day too late. The fact is to find a time when you're not crying on the floor next to your pet, apologizing. I walk into homes and there's such a difference in the way people feel when I walk in and they have a plate full of bacon and they have peanut butter and they have chocolate and the dog wants to eat all of these things. And they went to the park and they saw their friends and the mailman came over the day before to say goodbye. And, all these beautiful, special things that happen that are so meaningful and wonderful. And the sun is shining and, and versus, I get there and they're like, please, can you come as fast as you can? And the dog is just like lying on the floor, like breathing so heavily and deeply. And that's all the dog can do. And he won't take even his most favorite treats, which is so heartbreaking for people. There's such a difference in that. And so, if you have to leave a little bit of life on the table, I think that's okay. And I would much rather euthanize a dog at a point where we are preventing a time of suffering rather than euthanizing them because they are now full on suffering. And so
you were sharing your story and the golden retriever, Eileen, the vet had to come out to the truck and the needle wasn't even halfway in her and she was gone.
Right.
Versus, Baron who, walked in, and was able to get him comfortable. And
right.
Again, it's a belief.
Yeah.
And I think as humans, we kind of like go for that last hope and question ourselves, did I do it the right time? Was it too soon? Did I wait too late? Like how to make those decisions. I mean, we don't make those decisions for my father-in-law, for our loved ones. We're not empowered to make those decisions.
Right.
So how do we do that for our pets?
Well, I say to people that you've made every other decision for your pet. You decide what they eat, when they eat, where they eat, when they go to the bathroom, who they play with, if they're staying home, like where they're sleeping, like you have taken control of that pet and you are making all their decisions. And this one, I really believe that they, you have the power and they trust us to make the best decision for them. And these decisions are made out of love. Like you're not making it because you're tired of cleaning poop off the floor anymore. You'll continue to clean poop off the floor every day if you need to. You're making these decisions because you know that you are doing what is best for your pet. So I do believe we have that power.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think people need to hear that distinction, that we've been in control of our pet lives and from the beginning to the end. So not to lose that level of caregiving, and again, not to get into the bioethics of, how this impacts when making human decisions, because we're talking about our pets right now.
Mhm.
But to let me also share with a crossover. So when I worked for hospice, we actually had a pet bereavement group,
Mm.
and it was interesting, well, and touching how some people admittedly said that they loved their pet and the loss of their pet was more than some of their humans that have been in their lives.
Oh, I
And
hear that all the
understandably,
time.
right?
Yeah. And there's a lot of guilt that comes with that, sadly. But I've definitely heard it from people that the relationships that they have with their pet are just, they're not as complicated as they are with some people in their lives, and even, parents or siblings. And so the loss of that pet and the loss of that unconditional love that was associated with that pet is huge for people. And yeah, it affects them, hits them way harder in some circumstances, more than a family member.
Because it's that unconditional love
Right.
and companionship, right?
Yep.
Your pet's not going to walk away with you because you're being, a jerk.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I go to people's homes and, I see that the pet sleeps with them. They work from home, so their pet is on their lap or right next to them. The dog is the reason they get out of the house to go for a walk and maybe even socialize a little bit with other people in the neighborhood. Their pets are their reason to get up in the morning,
Yeah.
and without that, it's just a huge loss, and it requires a real big change in your daily routines, which is hard to do.
So what advice do you have for families that are in that hospice transition, um, and having I don't want it's not, I'm not saying replacement pet, but I mean, for us, it's a little easier because we do rotate dogs. Like we bring dogs in at, every 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
So we're never without dogs. For some people that have been, very single focus minded on one dog, and that dog's been their life. I have one friend in mind I'm thinking of. She doesn't have any children. Her cockapoo is her life, but that dog is reaching the end of her life. And
Right.
she said, I am taking bereavement days when this dog is lost, because even knowing the company might not feel that it's a bereavement day, but for
Yeah.
her, it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to coach her a little bit about, I mean, I don't know about introducing a new dog to a 17-year-old dog, but
Right.
what's your advice as far as, I don't say giving permission, but encouraging people if they really feel they need that additional love and support in the house, not to
Mhm.
wait until the other animal has passed? Or is that advice that you give them?
Well, I can tell you that when there is a second pet in the house, the loss doesn't feel as great because the house isn't going from, pet hair and barking at the door or the click, click, click of nails to nothing. And so having a second pet really does make a huge difference. Um, Having said that, if you had a 17-year-old dog, I'm not sure I would bring a puppy into the house. But I am all for getting another dog after. I don't think you have to wait a certain amount of time. I don't think you have to put yourself through the sadness of it all. I mean, I understand the grieving, and I understand needing a bit of a break and, regrouping for it. But I have always said, if you love loving a dog and you love being loved by a dog, get another dog. Like, your dog that you lost would never want you to be sad. They would never say, I need you to, grieve just a little bit longer to really show your love for me. That's not happening. And there are so many pets that need families. So I am all for it. I know when I lost our first dog as an adult, um, I said, like, oh my God, I am done. I'm not doing that again. Well, within 2 weeks, I was sitting on the internet looking for another Bernese Mountain Dog. I mean, my house was so quiet. I couldn't stand it. I needed another. And it was an amazing decision. And I mean, I don't think I'll ever be without. And I'm really sad when people feel like they need to kind of punish themselves in a way, and not allow themselves to love again.
And I've heard that expression. I could never love another animal like I've loved Chewy, right? Like,
They're different
to
though.
have that conversation with Kelly Ripa and say, you have so much love for this dog. Why you don't believe that you can continue with another one? Because as you said, we've talked about puppies, but there are a ton of rescues out there.
Yep.
And I also, just to again make that human connection, there are opportunities where the dog needs to be rehomed because the human has transitioned into, a nursing home facility or a long-term care facility, and they can't bring their pet with them.
Mm-hmm.
So that is another gift that people can gain.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, should you compare? Will you have the same experience with another dog? Even if you got the same breed? The answer is no. But it can be an equally beautiful, special, different experience. You get so used to the old sick pet that you had that when there's new life in the house with a new pet, it's really, it's wonderful. It's special. And I love, and it just happened to me a couple of days ago when a client sends me a photo of their new pet. Someone that I only met that one day when I helped them say goodbye to their pet. But I knew, I could see the love that they had, such a special relationship, such a special bond. And he just sent me a picture of same breed. He always gets the same breed. And I wrote back, like, this is the best thing that has happened to me today. Like, it's wonderful. It's really, really wonderful.
And I want to share a story about one of my clients. We've been talking a lot about dogs, but the cats are up there as well, right?
Yep.
So I have several clients who are solo agers, right? They never married, no kids, and their pets are their family.
Yeah.
So when we're building out their final playbook, their end of life plan, we incorporate their pet very much part of that. Making recommendations. It's interesting. One of the tasks that we have them do in the final playbook is create this in case of emergency card. And my recommendation is make sure that one of those people on the in case of emergency, that they have access to your pet.
Right.
Because you need to make sure that if you are incapacitated or in the hospital or something, that your pet is well taken care of. Because I'm sure I've heard stories where something happens to the human and the pet is left in the house unsupervised for multiple hours, if not days.
Yeah.
And then also in building out an end of life plan, making sure financially that pet is also well cared for and has a designated custodial. Now,
Right.
Is that something that you work with aging people or people who are terminally ill and trying to rehome or prepare for their dog's transition to another owner?
We don't help so much with that. There are organizations that do that. An interesting thing that has happened to us is that we have had people reach out and say that they are scheduled for MAID, medical aid in dying, themselves, and they have a pet, and they would like their pet to be euthanized upon their death.
Oh,
yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, we don't do that. I understand why they want that to some degree. I mean, I think for some people, they feel that no one else could love their pet the way they do, or it's a challenging, behaviorally challenged type of pet. But we are not prepared to just euthanize otherwise healthy pets just because the owner wants us to.
Because the owner's on their way out and they want their beloved pet to join the journey. Is that it?
Yeah. They want their ashes to be together, buried together. Or they just want to know that they don't have to worry about their pet.
I think it's that.
And so, those are always really tricky situations. But I, myself included, and my other doctors are not going to want to show up and just euthanize this cat just because the owner wants to. So it's a tricky one, and we give them, other phone numbers to reach out to rehome, smaller shelters. But yeah, we've had that situation a few times.
And we can talk about memorializing the pet. I have to share the story about my breeder. I have a Briard, and the breeder has dedicated her life to Briards. So never married, no kids. And she shared with me when I was visiting that she's got all of her dogs in a box on a shelf. And she has instructions that when her time comes, that she has arrangements that all of the ashes of herself and all of the pets, now a funeral home won't do this, but maybe you can get a family member or a clear, dear friend,
Right.
shall be blended together and memorialized in some sort of ceremony. And I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's how they want to go out.
I'm sure places will do some, I believe if somebody wants that to happen, that can happen. But yes, I've been to many homes and there are several pets along their shelf. Mine are kept in a drawer. But everybody is different. And there are so many different things that you can do now with ashes that is really interesting as well. So, whether you have your pet's ashes mixed eventually with yours, or some people are making, some ashes into diamonds or beautiful jewelry. There's so many things that can be done. Even, ashes can be mixed with some tattoo ink.
My son did it. I was going to share that. My son actually, his beloved Sosa, went ahead and had a tattoo of his face and used the ashes. It's amazing the artwork that they're able, and how to memorialize.
Right. Yeah, there's so many different things. I know on my shelf I have some of my dog's fur. I have an ink print, nose prints. We're doing so one of the services that we offer to families is aquamation, which is water-based cremation, which is a service that I started about 3 years ago for the families that we help. And we have these little stones that we can take the ashes and mix it with a sort of resin and cement and make them into these really pretty stones that are sort of nice to hold, but you can also just place in a special part of the garden. That was your pet's favorite spot. So there are so many things that can be done. And I have a place up at our cottage. I have a few stones there with previous pets, and it just makes me smile. It's a nice little reminder.
Because these pets are so dear to us.
Absolutely.
So much. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Do you have any takeaways for our listeners that they can start thinking about when it comes to, preparing for the transition and the death of their pet?
I think the biggest thing is being prepared. I'm not saying that, you have to have every single thing laid out, although I think it is a good thing. I think it's important to give thought to your feelings on euthanasia. Will your children want to be there? Are there special memorial items that you want? Do you want it to be done at home? Do you want it to be done in a park? Do you want it to be done in your car? Or at the clinic. So just giving some thought to these things, knowledge is power. And so having an understanding of what it looks like really allows you to sort of be a little bit more calm in the whole process, because this is not a time for surprises at all with people or pets. Having a plan is really a good idea.
And with that, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your time. And how can people get in touch with you?
Well, they can follow me on TikTok, or my service is called Midtown Mobile Veterinary Hospice Services in Toronto.
In Toronto. All right. Thank you so much. And we'll end here. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Digital Legacy Podcast, where we talk about death and dying in the digital age. I hope this conversation inspired you to take control and plan for the inevitable to protect yourself and those you leave behind. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter at digitallegacypodcast.com. Remember, life is full of surprises. What happens after you die shouldn't be. So keep your passwords safe and your playbook up to date.